I didn't have a gyna at that point, which is something I would recommend to all ladies and to every mother or parent who has an adolescent. Please get your
Check your daughter.
Yes.
To see a guy. Just a general
yes,
checkup.
as soon as possible. As soon as possible.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to Your Health Kenya, a space where we get to discuss everything matters health. And I really do hope that you've been enjoying the episodes that we have been releasing on our current series on reproductive health. Just getting to hear stories of different women who've gone through different reproductive health challenges, as well as just the knowledge behind some of this condition with experts as well as nutritionists. And we are looking forward to a great conversation today. And our guest for today is a very brave lady who went through a certain period of her life where she had fibroids and had to go through that journey of just seeking treatment to begin with, and now she's here to share her story and what her journey was like. So ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome my good friend. I was about to say her name, but I think let me let her introduce herself.
Wow, what an
Karibu
introduction.
sana.
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Iddah Mumeita Kitavi. I am a child of God. I am a wife, a mom to be.
Amen.
Amen. Yes. But most of all, I'm very passionate about things health and reproductive health. And by the grace of God, I conquered fibroids?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
You bravely walked that journey.
Yes.
Came out to the other side.
Yes.
And I mean, I can relate because I've been through that journey as well.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much our conversation for today. Just getting to unpack what your journey was like. I think I don't know that to do a spoiler alert because we had recorded this episode before, so we've had to redo it again.
Yeah.
But I think, as I mentioned earlier through our conversation, my journey was a unique one, if I may. So I'm still, let's say, still processing it a bit.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know, for yourself, what did your journey rather look like? When did you get to discover you have fibroids? If you can take us through what that journey was.
Okay. So my journey was like this because I feel like I've lived most of my adult life. I'm pretty young, but I'm not,
Tell us your age without telling us your age.
Yeah. So I feel like from the moment, as Waswahili sema ukianza kubalehe, like the moment your body starts to become an adolescent, to now where I am, I feel like I discovered I had fibroids the same year I had surgery. Like, the people who know they have fibroids. And they're like, okay, the doctor has asked me to monitor, or we're monitoring, or... I feel like I found out I had fibroids too far gone into my journey.
Yeah, it was a sudden one.
It was a very sudden one. So how did I find out I have fibroids? I was, so in I don't say my former life, but previously, before I work now, I worked at a media station. And so that day we had just finished our show and I had gone back to the office to do a few things here and there before finally heading out. So somewhere in the midst of that, I got pressed. So I went to the washroom and I realized I'm pressed but nothing's coming out. Like, that release you feel after your bladder was so full. And I'm like, what's going on? So I thought, maybe it's psychological. So I went back to the office, I sat down, I went back to the loo again, nothing is coming out. So I thought, okay, maybe I need to go and use my washroom back at home. So by the time I'm getting home, fast forward, my bladder is so full. I'm in so much
you're not
pain.
Able to relieve yourself?
I was not able to relieve myself at work at all.
Wow.
I'm in so much pain. So the first person I called was my mother. I called my mother and I'm like, Mom, I'm unable to pee. I don't understand what's going on. She's like, what do you mean you're unable to pee? I'm like, I'm sitting on the toilet, but nothing is coming out. And so she said, okay, then open the taps. So you know how that key, when you hear water,
psychological.
Yeah. So I opened the tap near my washroom, nothing. I decided, okay, maybe let me go and sit in the shower. It's not good practice to pee in the shower, guys. But like at that point,
anything.
I was like, if I pee, then we give thanks. I sat in the shower, nothing. I picked my phone, I called a nurse friend of mine, and she was like, just basically the same thing, yeah? So when I told her nothing had happened, she said, okay, then maybe you need to go and get checked. So I called my mom and I told my mom, okay, mom, even ndivo kuko. So my mom is like, okay, go to hospital. So I literally, like, those hospitals that are just close to your house, it felt like the longest journey ever, because like my belly was it had protruded at that point. And here's the thing, if I take you back, my belly had been protruding over time, but I just thought I was gaining weight.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you the physical symptoms.
Yes.
That were happening prior to that.
Yes. So my belly had been protruding, but in my mind, I'm like, I need to go to the gym. I need to stop eating carbs. I need to, But then that day, when my bladder was so full, I don't know why, but my belly looked bigger than the normal size. So I go to the hospital. And because they didn't have a proper ultrasound machine, they're just like, okay, we're seeing something on your bladder, but we can't see it properly. But we're also seeing that you sort of have like an infection of some sort. So I was given some medication intravenously, and I was able to ease myself a little bit. Oh my God, it was super painful. It felt like I was burning in that moment, but just having to relieve my bladder at that point. So the doctor is like, by this point now, my boyfriend, my now husband, had already come to the hospital. And my sister was there, so my mom wasn't able to come because she was pretty far. And so they're like, okay, what do you mean? You couldn't be. And I'm like, guys, I don't understand. They say I have an infection, but I don't get it. So later on, right before I went into surgery, is when I understood that there was a fibroid sitting on my bladder. So because I think it had been growing over time, I was not fully emptying my bladder. So uchafu the dirt, for the French stroke Swahili people who don't speak Swahili, the dirt had accumulated at the surface of my bladder. So in time, it accumulated until it got blocked. So that now began my journey fully.
I'm curious to know, now that you said one of the physical symptoms that you noticed was the bulging of your tummy.
Yes.
But it didn't really raise any alarm. You thought it's weight gain. Did you ever experience any changes with your menses? Because I know for fibroids, for quite a number of women, and I think personally as well, it was the changes in my periods that indicated something was off.
Yeah. So I think in hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, those are not normal periods.
So you are not keeping track, because I think for me, I was already accustomed to keeping track of my menses. So the minute something changed, I was quickly able to know that something is not okay, especially after I think 2-3 consecutive months, and I noticed the pattern had completely changed. I think by the 3rd month I was like, no, something is off.
So for me, the cramping, again in hindsight, I'm like, what cramping was that? The cramping was a bit intense. The flow in my mind, day 2 has always been heavy, so sorry to be a bit gruesome, but there are days I'd even get like clamps and clots. And in my head I'm like, hey, that was a heavy flow, but it never occurred to me that there could be something else. Another symptom that really bothered me was bloating. I was constantly bloated. And later on, even now, I'm like, hey, what was that? I was constantly up with my hot water and lemon, and I thought maybe it was my diet. Probably the diet had a part to play, but I think that just by virtue of the fact that those things were, and they had begun to push some of the
other organs
in
your body,
because now I eat and I belch involuntarily. I'm like, hey, this feels nice.
Yeah.
But such small things.
Yeah.
I don't know why it never really occurred to me. But yeah, one of the symptoms that probably should have made me think twice was obviously the flow and the protruding belly. But for me, I was like, I see you're gaining too much weight. Yeah. So those were some of my physical symptoms.
All right, so let's continue.
Yes.
So you go to the hospital. The first hospital, they tell you, it's there's something, but then you have an infection, so let's treat the infection,
right?
And they recommend you for further checkup.
Yes, they did. So 1 week after I completed the medication, I went to a certain hospital in Nairobi named With Health. And so when I go there, I didn't have a gyna at that point, which is something I would recommend to all ladies and to every mother or parent who has an adolescent. Please get your children.
Take your daughter to see a guy. Just a general checkup.
Yes, as soon as possible. Yeah. Because some of these things like fibroids is genetic.
Yes.
So it can be, that's probably one of the things.
Yes.
So if it is genetic, then you would want to discover it. Because sometimes you don't have to go through what you and I.
Absolutely. And the earlier you discover it, the quicker we can begin the treatment, which can be a less invasive treatment.
You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was gonna be my first encounter with a gyna. So I walked in and I saw this gyna and she's looking at me and she's like, sis. So obviously she laid me on the table, and another sign I should have picked up, my belly was hard as rock, my lower belly. That's another symptom. I don't know why. Oh my God.
So to you, which I think that's the one thing that I've been saying, and we've been saying with most of the guests that I've had unpack conversations of their journey, is that as a woman, please be in touch with your body. Be in touch with your body, because when you're in touch with your body, you'll notice when something is off.
Absolutely.
That migraine that you've been like, hey, it's now been 3 months, it's been 4 months. This is not normal. Or maybe your menses, you've been having excruciating pain just out of nowhere. It could be indicating something. So I think one thing for me I keep saying is be an advocate of your health. Be an advocate of your body. Because when you notice some of these things, and especially when you consequently notice them, consecutively, you're like, hey, okay, the first month you can excuse it to be something else, but after a couple of months, it's still persistent, then that should take you to the hospital.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So she put me on the examination table and she's like, your belly. And I'm like, my belly. So right off the bat she goes, hey.
She can feel the hard stuff. And for an experienced doctor, they always know automatically. They'll just tell you before even an ultrasound. They can tell you.
These are fibroids. I'm like, huh? So she says, okay, let's just do a certain. Let's just go. Let's go get an ultrasound. So I go get the ultrasound, and indeed, it's a fibroid. So in that moment, I feel like I'm going through so many things at the same time. I'm like, I have fibroids. How did I not know I have fibroids? I'm almost beating myself up. Like, Iddah, how could you not know? Your body was going through all these things. How could you not know this was what was going on? Anyway, so I come back with the results, and the gyna, being the gyna, just goes, okay, so we need to operate. And she takes the calendar and she's opening it and she's like, you need to go through a myomectomy. Do you even know what a myomectomy is? Like, I was like, can I just take a beat? She's like, okay, so when do you think I'm free on this and this and this and this? So basically to her, it's like, okay, we are done. You have fibroids.
Next stage, we
need to operate.
And that time it wasn't even the kawaida bikini cut.
No,
she was recommending.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. So the importance of having done this before. Anyway, so she sent me for MRI. That thing. Oh my God! I think about it today, and I'm like,
somebody said it's like a little coffin that you put through.
I kid you not. Like, I walked into that room and I saw that machine and I'm like, yeah. So thankfully my best friend, shout out to Natalie, this girl was there with me that day. And you're not supposed to fall asleep So you're just hearing weird sounds. Oh my God. So she sent me for an MRI. She's like, yeah, so I need you to go for an MRI so that we see if you're going to cut vertically or... And I'm like,
Wow.
excuse me, I beg your finest pardon. Like, nipeleke pole pole, you know. So I go, I get the MRI and I come back and she's like, yeah, so what day? She's literally.
Wow.
And here's the thing, I understand the urgency of the matter. It was an urgent thing. However, I feel like there were better ways that she would have handled that particular situation. Because I'm already in shock.
Yes. There was no time to process or even just the support of, okay, just out of nowhere, there's this big bombshell that's been dropped.
Yeah.
And prior to that, had you previously heard about fibroids or encountered people who have
So here's the thing. I think I had heard about fibroids, but not in its entirety. You get, like, I just knew the fibroids. There's something called fibroids.
You know, like distant, which a lot of women, unfortunately, we catch ourselves in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I've had out there until it hits closer home. Exactly. That's when you're like, bro, like I need to know and learn about this thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like she didn't give me the time to process, you know, or just like assure me and ensure that, because in that moment I was feeling like this just feels like they're out for my money. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel I didn't feel hard. Yeah, I didn't feel like I got the opportunity to process. So anyway, so I walked out of that office feeling very...
There was no empathy.
Yes.
Because I realized in the medical field of medical practice, there's really a core importance of empathy. And I think that this really goes out to all our medics, you know, especially when you've been on the receiving end of being a patient.
Yeah.
When you encounter a medic who shows no empathy, it ends up making the whole experience more brutal than it already is. So you're already suffering with this particular condition or disease.
Yeah.
And the least that you would need in that particular moment is some level of empathy, you know. But when that empathy is not given, there are all this level of shock. There's a shock of this is disease you're dealing with. You still need to understand what that is. And then on the other end, you feel like, oh, wow, just hold up. I'm still processing this, you know. Don't give me, you know, just piss out on how much information you're giving me in regards to what I've just discovered I have.
Yeah, so... I couldn't even have put anybody, but all that was lacking in that moment.
Yeah.
Not to mention the exorbitant bill that you know, they tell you it's gonna cost about this much. Excuse me. So I think
I'm assuming you had insurance, because I realize it's a sad reality, but sometimes whenever you have insurance, the treatment option is given so fast, and sometimes it almost feels like you're not even given time to process other options. You know, if I may, other options in regards to would it be possible to get maybe a cheaper, you know, option for treatment, or what alternatives are there? It's more of, okay, so we're gonna do this because clearly you have insurance, so let's get on it. And particularly operation.
Yeah, true. So that was, for me, it was just, I was just like, no, thank you. So I left that hospital, and on my way home, I remembered, I have a cousin who went through the same thing the previous year. So I called her and I was like, hey, she's called Gladys. Hey, Gladys, ever walk me through your fibroid surgery journey? And she mentions her gyna and how her gyna was so graceful and how her gyna was and I was like, okay, can I please have your gyna? Can you please recommend your gyna? So I called him and we set up a meeting for the next day. So I went and I saw him the next day, and let me tell you, it felt like night and day. Like literally, like, yes, so I went with my tests. I went with the MRI and the ultrasound. And it's like, yes, you do have fibroids, but let's talk about it. You know, and that for me made a whole world of difference. Like, he gave me the opportunity in that moment to ask my questions, to express my fears because I was scared. I had never been admitted in hospital my entire life. This was going to be my first time. Yes, he gave the same diagnosis that, I would need surgery. But I feel like his approach for me made me a bit more confident, even in him and his skill. Not to take away from the other doctor and her skill, but there was just a settling in me that was like, okay.
You felt safe.
Exactly.
Somebody that says safe is that word.
Exactly.
And it means you feel safe with that doctor, and you know that's a doctor that you can journey with through your conditions. And I think that's a word out to somebody out there. Just make sure that whether it's a gynecologist that you need to see or whichever doctor who's handling you, make sure you feel safe and you feel heard and you feel listened to. With that doctor, because then they're the ones who take you through the whole journey to a place of recovery and hopefully complete healing.
And also remember, you're not getting that service for free. You're going to pay.
You're paying, yes.
So it's only right that you get your money's worth. And sometimes, even if the service is given for free, I feel like doctors take an oath or something.
Yeah.
So if your patient is sort of doubting, feeling unsafe, feeling unsure, then I feel like you need to, think things through. So I really, really, really thank God for him. He's called Dr. Onyambu. I really thank God for Dr. Onyambu. And he's my gyna to date. Because he was very patient with me. He answered all my questions. I remember when he put me on that examination table and he was feeling my tummy. He was like, "You're so young. You're the age of my children. How do you have these things?" There's a lot of empathy, even in just how he spoke to me. And so I left that office, knowing, okay, surgery is going to happen and Onyambu is going to be the gyna. So that made me feel a little better. However, I feel like I went down a rabbit hole, which I don't know, we didn't mention last time, but it's just come to mind.
Yeah.
I went to School of Google. Oh, Lord. Google will tell you how it's gonna be rough. There's some roughness in it, but I feel like I got very fearful in that moment.
Yeah, because there's a fine line between getting information to prepare well.
Yes.
For the journey ahead, especially once you've been diagnosed with a specific condition.
Yes.
But there's also the other extreme end whereby let me tell you, Google can make you feel like you're gonna die the next 1 hour. First of all, it can tell you all these complications that I don't know from where. You'll even be linking your condition to I have cancer. Bro, who's even told you? But it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
When you decide to go that direction of now seeking out, unfortunately, too much information. I think that's why medical doctors don't highly recommend.
Yeah, that you Google your symptoms. Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, I think at some point I just caught myself. And then there was this whole thing that I was going through with my parents, just trying to find out, where is this from? Is it hereditary? Is it... and then I later on found out that all of my father's sisters had fibroids.
Wow.
So for me, it just clicked. This is genetic, right? My mother's side, however, all her siblings, none of them had fibroids. So I was like, okay, so... I'm adding 2 + 2, and in my head I'm like, okay, this is definitely genetic. So even for me, knowing that now, if God does bless me with daughters, that's something at the back of my head. I'm like, okay, we need to make sure that God forbid, but I need to make sure I have that in check for my children because of
the history.
Yeah. So are we going to go into the surgery? Yes. So I had surgery on the 9th of June 2022. I remember.
Okay, so before you get into surgery, that visit that you made with Dr. Onyambu,
yes,
were you given options of treatment, or what was the conversation like? Now that you said you felt safe, you felt you have space to, when he told you, okay, now let's unpack this. What did that look like?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of the size of the fibroids at that moment, a laparoscopy, which is a less invasive procedure, was not going to work. So for me, the only way out was going to be a myomectomy.
Okay.
Because
were there multiple?
Yes, there were multiple fibroids.
Okay.
They removed about 7 fibroids. The largest was, I think, 16 centimeters by something, I forget. So they're quite big. And the smallest was like, I think, a 4. So they just literally removed, including the small arms. So I think in that moment, he just made me understand that, listen, Iddah, these things are quite big. We can't remove them out any other way except through a myomectomy.
And he explained
that to me. He made me understand. And he even made me, just come. He's like, don't worry, I know you're young. So we'll just do a small bikini cut. And I'm thinking, this other one was telling me how she's thinking if she's going to do a vertical or day and night. To this day, my husband and I have a joke. He calls it his Ziploc. Because it's such like a small, a very small scar. So he made me understand why I was gonna go for that procedure and not another one. So by the time I was leaving, I felt like I needed, like, all the questions I had in that moment were answered. It's just that when you go home and you sit with your thoughts and you're like, then you go to Google, worst mistake. I don't know why I just didn't ask my gyna in that moment, because he allowed me to call him and ask him any questions if I had. Anyway, Google just felt faster. But yeah, so by the time I was leaving, I was very settled. And I knew, okay, this is it.
So prior to us going to the treatment option that he gave you, I think it would be very critical for us to unpack, what did your quality of life look like when you discovered you had this condition, even just prior to discovering you had the condition, because I think it will be important to really emphasize just how much some of these conditions affect our quality of life. And I know you've shared a bit of it, but I think it would be good to just be able to contrast prior to you getting treatment, what did your quality of life look like?
Right. So I spoke about the bloating, which was such a big issue for me, and how now I'm just like, I was living a lie. But there was also menstruation, my menses. There were, like I said, there were a lot of clots, there were a lot of
heavy bleeding.
Yes, heavy bleeding.
Yeah.
Post-surgery, I'm like, kumbe watu usikianga hivi, I didn't know any better, but my menses, the cramps also, they were so bad, they were so excruciating. Like, I would throw up. I would, like, you'd think I have malaria for one day.
Yeah, but in your mind you just thought that's normal. But that's just part of PMS.
Exactly, and now, and I think also after I embraced I embraced a working out routine, and I realized, so after surgery zikafungua, then now when I incorporated working out, I'm like,
You've seen how much your quality of life has improved.
Absolutely. So those are some of the things that for me were really, really major. And then of course my belly, I look like a 6 months pregnant lady bana. Like I'm also trying to fit into my jeans, and it was ridiculous. So the thing about menstruating also and having a really heavy flow is that sometimes you don't have control over it. So I was constantly conscious of myself. I feel like when I was menstruating, that was one of the seasons where, especially day 1 and 2, I just didn't want to meet people, because I'm like, what if I come out and I mess myself? And so it can take a toll on your esteem as well, and that for me was very, like, I used to walk around with pads of pads in my bag.
Yeah. Just to be like the maxi peak that you can get in.
Exactly. Just so that I don't mess myself. Because for me, I was like, how do you even start explaining?
And what about like your social life? Because I think one of the things with some of these conditions, reproductive health conditions, one of the questions that the gynae normally asks is, do you have children?
Yes. Oh, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that was a question that I was asked. So do you have children? And then post-surgery,
and that was prior to you were not married then.
Yes, I was not married then. So do you have children? And then, in the sweetest of ways, after this you might have to harakisha, and I'm thinking,
yeah, if I could, I would. Trust me, in a snap of a finger, make myself pregnant.
If I could, I would.
Yeah.
So that was something else. So even when the time came for me to get married, and my husband and I went to see my gynae was like, sister, we know where I've come from, so
try and harakisha.
Yeah. So
but I also remember there was that instance whereby I think just the the place where you felt so overwhelmed.
Yes.
And sometimes also the complications that come with some of these conditions, where the doctor tells you, okay, so these are the realities. Sometimes there's due complication to do with getting a baby and all these things.
Yeah.
Did that have an effect in your relationship then?
Oh, yeah. So
or even just personally.
Yeah. I mean, let's just take it back before the surgery. So, right before the surgery, again, Dr. Google had told me, and I think this is one of the things that maybe you have also had, that sometimes fibroids make it a bit difficult to conceive. And so I remember that day, my husband, my boyfriend then, and I had gone out for coffee. And I was like, babe, I might not be able to give you children because of this thing. So I'm just setting you free. It was so dramatic. But taking away from the drama, in that moment, I felt, because he's always communicated how he wants children. And I see how he is around children. And so for me, I was like, what if I'm unable to have kids, even post the surgery? Because anything could happen. These things could recur. So even the confidence in myself in that moment just took a dip, because I'm like, what if I'm never able to bear my own children? What would that, how would that look like for us? Like, we've talked about children, we've talked about wanting children, and then what if that's not our reality? And so I felt like, instead of trapping him, because you are not engaged, you are still dating.
Yeah.
So instead of trapping him and maybe subjecting him to a marriage where his wife might never be able to give him children, let me just let him go. But he was like, I'm marrying you for you. Like, I'm dating you. Okay, later on, I'm dating you to marry you for you, But you know how it encourages you, but in your heart of hearts, you're just like, hey, nakakiniramba, What if I'm unable to? So it definitely poses a certain fear. Because let me tell you, Trisha, nobody wants to hear they have a problem with their reproductive system. Nobody.
Especially prior to childbearing. Before you get children, rather.
So you're just like, hey God, Manze, like, I've waited for this thing, and now that it's around the corner, you're throwing all these curveballs at me, So even my faith, I had so many questions for God. I was like, God, why? Like, this doesn't make any sense, So yeah, I mean, definitely in my relationship, I feel like it really, it shook me more.
But I mean, bless God for supportive husbands, fiancés, boyfriends, because let me tell you, the journey that women go through, honestly, especially when it's connected to reproductive health, it's so critical to have a supportive partner. So critical, because I think it's a journey and a half, in that if you don't have somebody who understands and can empathize and extend grace in some seasons or moments, and be fully there to support you through that journey, man, you can be experiencing hell on earth. You're already struggling with your body, and then you have a partner who is very distance.
Official,
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I'm truly grateful for him. Mr. Kitavi, thanks. But yeah, he was and he continues to be a pillar.
Yeah.
Because you realize even post surgery, which I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but post surgery you need to go for regular checkups.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like every time I go for a checkup, it's always just like it's like a pit in my stomach. And so even in those days, he just continues to be a pillar, which is just goes back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Partners are also very, very important. Yeah.
All right. So you were given the treatment.
Yes. So for me, the verdict was surgery.
Okay.
So 9th June, we walk into Coptic Hospital with my mother. And I remember before I went into surgery, because I went into surgery at around, I think 3:30, 4 p.m. thereabout. I was so anxious. And funny enough, the previous day, I slept really well. Like, nililala kulala. But the day of, I was so anxious. I was so scared. I was going, like, so many things. What if I don't wake up? What if, like, there's so many questions in my mind. But I remember being wheeled into the theater. And first of all, I was like, this place is so humongous. And then you're seeing people wearing green things, arranging tools. I was like, yo, take me back. And I think in that moment, I just began to cry. I started crying. And let me tell you, I feel like it's one of the most vulnerable moments. Because you just have that key thing on. Let
me tell you, hospitals can humble you. It don't matter whether you're a president. If you ever go through any hospital experience, where you have to wear one of those hospital
my Lord.
Highest level of humility. Then you cried everything to the
window. So now you're crying and you're like, I just have this thing on. So now, umejishikilia. By the end of the day, you're like, I know, I'll just let go and then see my body, So my guy just comes, because now I was on the bed. And he asks me, Iddah, why are you crying? Walk me through your fear. And I'm like, I hate pain. I know I'm going to wake up in pain.
Yeah.
And I take him through this whole thing. And the beauty about that moment is every fear that I expressed, he sort of tried to counter it. And so for the pain, I was like, I hate pain. I know, I wake up in pain. He's like, okay, I'll make sure you're on pain meds from the moment you leave this theater. Anything else, And so by the time we were done with that conversation, I was so much more relaxed,
And we'll definitely, there's that other episode that we got to do. Just the journey in terms of just how to prepare well, prior to surgery, during surgery, and post surgery. And I think that conversation is a critical one, for someone who perhaps you're out there and you've been told ultimately you have to go through a myomectomy as a treatment option for your fibroids. But there's that episode whereby we get to unpack more in details just how you can prepare well prior to surgery, during surgery, and post surgery. So we'll go more in depth in that conversation.
So he was there. I remember once I was injected, he literally just came and held my hand. And from there, I think I drifted off. And I woke up in this recovery room with a loud machine on my left ear. But yeah, that was pretty much.
Yeah. And then after that, you had to go through a whole recovery phase. Yes. And in that episode, definitely we get to talk through what are some of the things that you learned that you can pass down to someone who might be going through or rather is preparing to go through a similar journey. But I'm curious to know what are some of the things that you know now that you wish you knew earlier in regards to your journey with fibroids.
I feel like one of the most important things is what you said. Just pay attention to your body. I wish I didn't assume so many things. Because probably it wouldn't have ended in a myomectomy, I wish, and I think it's so subconscious, but nowadays I'm always like just pressing my belly, So I wish that was one of the things I knew, like, okay.
Yeah, just being conscious enough to know that there are changes happening with my body. As you say,
100%.
definitely when you feel like there's something like a rock, in your tummy, your lower belly, that's not normal.
Yeah.
There's something off.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I just wish I was a bit more aware. Knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
I wish I was that aware back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, all ends well.
Yes.
I'm definitely wiser for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wish.
Yeah, you're a little bit more conscious.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the other thing, in regards to just this journey and some women that I've gotten to engage in this conversation, and not just other women, but also myself.
Yeah.
That place of going for gynecological visits. Let's talk about
I cannot like, I feel like I'm that girl now. I feel like there's something wrong. I'm like, doc.
Yeah.
Like for me, honestly, Trisha, I'd rather be known as the girl who always runs to the gyna than just sitting and waiting. I'm telling you, anything small, my husband will tell you, I will drag him to the gyna's office because I once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, and I think what's even more critical is what I realized is majority of women of reproductive age, as long as your majority of the women who are not sexually active, to be precise, never see a need to see or visit a gyna, because you're at the lower risk of getting some of these diseases because anyway you're not sexually active. So you don't really see the urgency or the need to see a gyna. But I think the reality of some of these reproductive health conditions might require you to do a gynecological visit maybe once a year. Just a checkup, just a general checkup, just to see how's my system, how's everything, am I okay, or maybe just ask a few questions here and there. But I think it's very critical to pass that information in regards to going for gynecological checkups once a year, you know, because majority of the time women go for gynecological visits either when they're about to get married, for contraception, especially church girls. Let's just be real, like we are church girls, we love God, we love Jesus, but your gynecological visit isn't against the Bible. So go for that doctor's checkup because it might save your life, and the earlier, the better it is.
100%. I mean, I feel like you've said it all. I couldn't emphasize more on just getting get checked in capital letters, bold, underlined.
So you don't have to wait to when you're getting married or now you become sexually active. That's when now you're going.
And even parents who have daughters, if your kid is an adolescent, because at that point the hormones are now raging, and some of these things imechangiwa sana na hormones. So you'd much rather just start taking your daughter to the gyna as soon as possible. And I remember there's a certain group of girls that I work with, and younger girls, and I remember just one of them, I was just sharing with them about just menstrual hygiene, and I just got to mention on like what's normal, menstrual cycle, what's abnormal, and I noticed that one of the girls, very young girl, her cycle was quite abnormal. Like the number of times that she would change in an hour, the like the heaviness of her periods, and I was like, like you need to tell your mama to take you to see a gyna, because that is not normal. And I'm like, at your age, and she was really young, below 15. I was like, it's very critical for the doctors to be able to identify what is the issue. You don't have to wait until you get to 18 when you have that liberty to take yourself to hospital. 100%. I feel like that's just it. That's just it. Just get checked. And mothers, please look out for your children as well.
Look out for your children. All right. So I want to go into the place of support system and just how critical support system is in this journey of some of these conditions that women go through. What support system did you have in place, whether it's in terms of your circle or your community, but also on the socials? Were there any particular support groups that you found helpful for your journey?
Okay, so I let me just start by saying my parents were very, very, very supportive in that season. My mom, that lady is a superstar. Super supportive. My boyfriend at that time and my best friend. I didn't feel like I wanted to share it, so I kept the circle really tight in that moment. But there are those, and then of course my cousin, because she'd gone through a similar journey, so she was able to walk me through through that through the journey basically.
So I know for somebody we are the cousins.
Yeah.
We are those, because I'm pretty sure maybe you're out there, you have no idea, where can I get this information from, who can support me in my journey. But we are
your cousins.
We are the cousins. Yes.
Yeah. So there's that. My mother-in-law, funny enough, was also really, really supportive. She called, she prayed. At that time, imagine I was not even her daughter-in-law, but she was so invested in my well-being, and I'm truly grateful to her for that. Then I discovered a Facebook page of different women who'd gone through this journey, fibroids. And there are different women there, from those who've gone through a laparoscopy, a myomectomy, to even the extreme, the guys who've done a hysterectomy. So it was just a community of women sharing their experiences and cheering each other on, and I found so much solace in that page as well. Just hearing and seeing people say, 2 weeks post-op and I'm okay, 6 weeks, such stories make you feel like, okay, hata mimi nitakuwa 2 weeks post-op sahi tu, so that page really, really, even post the surgery, I'm still checking if I see something just doesn't look amiss, because utapata people have spoken about it. So that page was also quite something.
What's the name of the page? Do you remember?
I can link it up to you. I think it's called Fibroids something. I'll send you the page, and then you can share it with anyone who would like to find help as well.
All right, as we learn this conversation,
yes,
what advice do you have for women who may be going through a similar journey, or they know somebody who is going through a similar journey?
Okay, so if you're going through this journey, first things first, you're not alone. And you will be okay. I feel like, and that's one thing that you need to hear before, is that you will be okay. But also listen to your doctor, and don't be afraid to seek a second opinion if the first opinion is not satisfactory. And if there are any instructions given to you, please follow them. But I feel like I just need to let you know that you will be okay. It will be okay. We are here. We've been through it. We are those cousins. And here we are sharing our stories. So in no time, you'll also be on the other side. And I promise you, it gets better. Your quality of life improves. Life just gets a lot more better. And then after that, please be careful of, or rather, how can I put this? Monitor your body, because fibroids can recur.
Yes.
Yeah. So monitor your body. And when they start growing, at times you don't feel that rock. So these regular checkups, this is where now they come in handy. But other than that, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Yeah.
I love that. And what a way to learn this conversation for any woman who might have fibroids, who's getting ready for treatment. Just remember that you'll be okay. Your quality of life will be back to normal. Even post-surgery, your body can go back to normal. I know sometimes it's hard to imagine what life will be post-surgery if, myomectomy is what has been recommended. But just know, whether it's myomectomy or laparoscopy or whatever type of treatment, your quality of life is going to improve tremendously. We've been through that journey, and we are here to give you hope and let you know that it's not the end of the world. It may feel like the end of the world when you get that diagnosis, but there's hope at the end of the tunnel. But that's it for today's conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, to subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and share this episode with all women around you. Not just women alone, but we also need to empower the men around us. We need to empower, because they could be our support system. We need to empower our colleagues. We need to empower everyone around us so that we can continue creating health awareness about some of these reproductive health challenges that a lot of women go through, and unfortunately some of them go through it silently. So remember to subscribe, like, leave a comment below if you've gone through this journey. If you have a word of hope, leave it in the comment section. Let us know whether this episode has been helpful for you, and also follow our social media handles at Your Health Kenya. That's it for today. Until next time, it is a goodbye.